You're 65 years old, married, and you've built up a little over $1 million in retirement savings, $1.1 million to be exact. And you're trying to ask yourself the very important question, how do I create a plan that allows me to retire with confidence moving forward? That's what we're going to look at in our video today. Hello, my name is John Vandergriff. I'm one of the owners and the wealth planning team lead here at Blue Ridge Wealth Planners, where we help people answer questions just like this on a daily basis of how to build out that retirement plan that allows you to do the things that you want to do, but also make that transition effectively as you move forward. And so as we look at this, I always like to start this example talking about a house. And again, if you've ever built a house, you know that there are several steps in this, but as we start to actually build it, the most important step of any house or building in general is making sure that you establish a strong foundation. And that foundation of a retirement plan is going to be the goals and objectives that are uniquely yours as you make this jump into retirement, thinking about the things that you want to be doing, thinking about the things that you want to avoid, and then trying to come up with a game plan of how to make strategic decisions in the areas that are needed to help you accomplish those goals with hopefully as much accuracy and success as possible. So as we look at this, we call what we do here building a plan for everything. And so as we look at this is going to apply to the 5 areas that affect your life in retirement in the financial world. And so we're going to see, obviously we need to make decisions of how we draw and cover the income needs and expenses that you have. How does that impact the way that you need to invest your money, both now and as we progress forward? How you go about paying taxes and keeping as much of the money that you put away for retirement. How you go about paying health care costs, both at the beginning and end of retirement. And especially for this couple as a 65-year-old, making that jump into Medicare can be something that's, challenging for folks. So making good decisions there, but also with some long-term care expenses later. And then the last bucket here with family and legacy, making sure that we're making good decisions whenever there is a transition, maybe from 2 spouses to 1 spouse, but then also when the second spouse passes, how do we leave that legacy in the most efficient way possible? And so as we do this, just like building a house, you don't have 4 independent walls that are not connected. You have a lot of overlap and connection between these different planning areas, which is why it's important to coordinate all of them in one place. And so as we look at this, if we do that effectively, and we start to build out this plan, what we want from that is what we call the 3 C's. The first is that you have more control over the things that matter. And you may be thinking, well, how do I have more control than I have now? I do everything myself. Well, again, working with someone to help you see what decisions need to be made in all 5 of these areas allow you to have control in the right way to make good, strategic, and hopefully more informed decisions than you would on your own. Secondly, we want you to have more of control, but also confidence. If you feel like control is in the right place, you're able to make good decisions as you move forward and feel confident in those decisions, maybe act on some things that you wouldn't have otherwise. And then the last one is comfort. We want you to be more comfortable. Therefore, we want you to be in a position where you are able to enjoy your retirement. You're able to do so because you've done some planning, and like we look at this, just like the roof protects your house, the 3 C's here are meant to protect the plan, because really as we look at this, it's not the storms and things that dictate what changes in the house. It's really the foundation that you have or how that foundation needs to change for anything that you're looking to build on top of it. So as we look at that, going into, and again, for everybody, we have this same type of discussion. Obviously, the way that you impact this is going to be different than everybody else. So since you can't give us goals and objectives today, we're going to fill this in just so you can see how this conversation typically happens. So the first one, as we said, the couple is looking to retire now at 65. They are also looking to make good decisions with their savings. Because again, a lot of times people don't know what to do as they make the jump into retirement, what things need to change. They want to pay a fair amount of taxes, and depending on who says that will determine what fair means. And then as we look at this, the last one was be able to leave a legacy to their children and grandchildren as they leave this earth. They want to be able to have some assets go because they were able to benefit from that, from their parents and that generation ahead. So as we look at things, the first place that we like to start is income, trying to figure out what you need on a monthly basis. Also annual, if it's going to be a recurring expense that you have, you want to factor that into how you're providing your income. And so this family was needing a little over $80,000 a year net of taxes. So when we rounded that up, we had $90,000 a year gross of taxes. And then if they made the decision to jump into Social Security right now, which we like to look at the beginning of this just to see if the numbers look good there, it could make maybe more sense to file that decision later. First spouse had $32,000 a year coming from Social Security. The next had $28,000. So they were in a position where their income sources with no pensions provided $60,000 a year, or about 2/3 of what they needed. And so then they have an investment or a need from their investments of $30,000 a year to be able to provide from somewhere. And so as we look at this, the step that we have to do here is figure out what percentage 30,000 makes up of the $1.1 million that they have put away in the different savings options that they have. And so by doing this math, and again, I did it beforehand, they've got 2.72% of need that they have on an annual basis off of this investment portfolio. And so what that tells us is that they are in a pretty good position to retire. We like to see this number be at 4% or less, because as we start to practically apply this, if we have 2.72% of income need, and then we add somewhere between 2 and 4% a year for inflation, then that shows that this couple needs to make somewhere between 4.72 and 6.72% as consistently as they can. That would allow them to keep the buying power of this $1.1 million if inflation is factored in, and then we're able to draw off consistent growth for their income. So some people say, why do you want to do that? Why do you want to keep things the same? Well, the biggest thing that we have to contend with for most people, and this family included, as we jump over to here to healthcare, they do not have long-term care or home health care coverage. And so the amount of money that they have to cover health care is going to be dependent on the income sources that they have, but also the amount of money that they've saved. Again, that may get spent down to a certain level before other things would come in and intervene, like Medicaid. But as we look at this, we want to be sure that they have assets that they're able to draw from, and hopefully those assets are not income dependent, meaning that they're decreasing their lifestyle because they're drawing out of this. If you start really drawing down the entire bucket over time, that's the type of dangerous situation that you want to avoid as much as possible. So as we look at this, one of the conversations that we like to look at when it comes to investments, because everybody needs to handle investments differently. There are no cookie cutter approaches to this, but I like to talk about what are the things that we need from our investments, and then how that will impact, obviously, the way that we need to position based on the priority of those. So as we look at this, the challenge most people have as they make the transition to retirement is their entire investment life has been focused on growth more than anything else. And again, early on, that made sense because you were in a position where you had time on your side, and because of that, you had a willingness to take more risk than you would at a time that you needed this money. So as we look at this, because you had a runway of decades of time, growth was really the focus. You didn't care about access and protection as much, unlike your 401k. But on the doorstep of retirement, you no longer have the time to leave this alone, and most people don't have a willingness to take a huge amount of risk on what they've put away. But saying that, we still need to have some in the growth category to cover inflation, because this is going to be something that will be a persistent problem over time. Things will get more expensive, and as you make the jump to retirement, that is putting pressure on your savings more than anything else to be able to provide the things that you need. So You probably still need some amount of money here, but how you balance that with access and protection pieces is really the key for most situations. So as we look at this, access, we've got to obviously have money accessible for the emergencies that may happen. Also, if you have larger purchases than what your monthly expenses will provide you, you need to be able to have that available somewhere. And then, as we talked about, that bucket that you need on hand for healthcare costs, because we unfortunately don't know when those are going to kick in for every family we work with. We want to make sure that we have that accessible and not real aggressively positioned, like maybe a stock portfolio in the growth side, so that you know that you can get to those. And then as we look at protection, obviously we've got a premium here on safety. So we want to make sure that we are keeping some aspect of the way that you invest safe. And typically that's going to be the types of positions that you want to take your income from. So as this couple has a $30,000 a year need, we would want to position things where they're drawing that $30,000 plus inflation out and maybe putting enough here to cover 10 to 15 years. And again, protection is going to encompass a lot of things, but the premium there is on safety, and then what varies may be the accessibility or return potential that you have in some of those investments. So as we look at this, having a conversation about where someone is, but also what weighting they need to have on this is going to be driven, by the conversation that we're having here, but also they're going to have some impact there. So as we look at this, desired maximum loss is going to be something that is dependent on you in your situation. So sometimes we write to be determined here. Sometimes we make that declaration in the first meeting, but the reality is, to determine risk and overall loss potential, we want to ask that question in a lot of different ways so that we're able to really get to what I would call the best answer that we can in helping you make a good decision, because one of the quickest ways that you can mess up the way you invest is taking too much risk and then you getting emotional about your investments, selling something that shouldn't have been sold, and then maybe put you behind the 8 ball when it comes to the growth potential that you need over time. So as we look at this, this couple now is actually making $110,000. But as we look at this, some people say, well, how would they go from $110,000 to $90,000? Well, when you make the jump to retirement, typically two main things are changing. First, you're going to stop paying, FICA taxes because you're no longer making earned income. But then secondly, you're no longer contributing into your 401k systems of saving for retirement because now you're in a position where you're using it. So as we look at this, between the amount that they were putting away, because this is their, kind of salary range, but it does account for, the money coming out of the 401k. If we account for FICA taxes, but also, some maybe drop in expenses that they may have as they make a jump into retirement, that may explain why you see a difference in some of these numbers as you make this transition over. But in any case, this year they're going to have a current top tax rate of 12%. And as we look at the breakdown of their savings, $600,000 is inside of after-tax positions, $400,000 is in, or pre-tax positions, $400,000 in after-tax, and then they have $100,000 in a Roth account that they have started a while ago and then been putting into. So compared to some people that we may see 90 to 100% of their money in pre-tax positions. They do have a good blend here, but one of the things that we want to look at with them is, does it make sense to start migrating some of this pre-tax money down now while we have lower tax rates? Because we know, based on where we're at today, we're at a relative low point when it comes to taxes. With them at $110,000, their top tax dollar today would be paid at 12%. But as they progress forward, if we look at 2017's brackets, which are actually the way the brackets will be in the year 2026 if the government doesn't change things at that time and maybe make them higher. They can do anything they want to. You notice that 12% now becomes 15, and not much inflation has to happen before they would maybe jump some dollars into the 25%. And again, with a lot of the things that we've looked at, the key for pre-tax money is just trying to find the time that you can leave that account where it costs you the lowest percentage. Doesn't matter if it's $1 or $1 million, you're in a position where if you can do that, that allows you to make the most of this money that you have, because the reality is taxes have been noticeably higher than what we've gotten used to, even considering 2017. If we look back, adjusted for inflation, 1981 tax brackets here, you will notice that this family would be in the 28% tax bracket with their top dollar, not the 12%, but notice that that top bracket jumps from 37 all the way to 70%. So not saying that 1981 is where we're going, but the reality could be somewhere between 2026 figures and where we are here. We don't know. That's the scary part about taxes and the impact that they can have on retirement is it is leaning a little bit on the past to try to make investment decisions that make sense moving forward. So as we look at this, because they have such a good start on getting dollars that have already gotten after tax, they're currently in a position where they have $500,000 of money that is liquid and pre or after tax today. So of the 1.1 million, not quite half, but almost half, is in a position where they could get to it. So this could be some of the money that needs to be in more of that access bucket, just for them to be able to not have a lot of risk on it, but be able to get to it in the event that one or both spouses need some type of custodial care. Hopefully we're many years away from that, and if so, maybe some of the tax planning decisions we make could cause that to be a larger percentage of their overall total. And then as we talked about before, leave a legacy. So the way that they want things to go, so obviously they want to take care of each other with these assets. So primary beneficiaries are both spouses in their respective 401ks. If they're jointly held, then they own those things together. They have 4 kids, so they're wanting to split things equally, 25% each. And so as we look at this is not uncommon, but this is a situation where both are listed on 401ks. No kids have been accounted for on 401ks from a beneficiary standpoint, so we do not have up-to-date beneficiaries. If we do decide to roll over those accounts at retirement, then that would be something that we would look to do on any new accounts that we establish, making sure that we make sure that those beneficiaries are up to date as much as possible. And then as we look at it, estate planning documents, they do have wills, so they've done the work to spell out what they want. They have done powers of attorney that will care for them either from a financial or a healthcare perspective. They actually do have a trust. But what is not unusual is they have a trust. Very few of their assets are actually owned by the trust. So that would be something that we would look to do with any investment accounts that apply, but they would also need to retitle their home into the trust just so it would be included in those assets. But again, all of these things, while they are important, the beneficiary designations on their investment accounts will supersede anything that does a will, and if they're not included in the trust, doesn't really help them from that legacy standpoint. So as we look at that, we want to make sure that we get everything cleaned up here. That way they're taking a good use of the money they've spent on legal documents so far, making sure everything is listed out the way that they would like and the way that makes sense. And then whenever we have legacy conversations, that can be a time where you start to talk about charitable contributions that you can make both at your death, but also while you're alive. But then also that's where you may have the conversation of if they're wanting to leave a certain amount to kids, the easiest way to do that is to structure some life insurance into the plan just to make sure that you are in a position to leave the type of legacy you want to without diminishing the investment savings. Because sometimes we've seen in the past people that will forego enjoying their retirement because let's say they wanted to leave $1 million to their children, which would be $250 each in this scenario. They will purposefully not enjoy their retirement so that they can accomplish that goal. Well, there's a different way to do that. You could just structure life insurance that allows that to be taken care of in a very tax efficient way. And then it also allows you to have the freedom to enjoy your life and really, based on the amount of need that they do have some room where they could pay for life insurance and it not be a big time negative to their overall plan. So as we look at this, this allows us to see from a high level perspective what things are needed, because a lot of times, going back to our house metaphor, we need to realize what things need to happen, what are the ways that we want to build this out, but then also see that on paper and see what things actually need to happen. So as we look at this is the high level look saying what do we need to do, and then the next step that we do is what we call a test and recommendations conversation, where we're going to test what you're doing now, see if you have the right materials, and then talk about what recommendations make sense if you decided to build this plan with us. And again, we do this on a daily basis. We have many years of experience. And so if you've never sat down with someone to have this kind of consultative conversation, but also working to a planning relationship, we would encourage you to sit down with us and see if we are a match. You know, you've already heard a little bit of how we talk. Everybody here does process the same thing, but we would enjoy having that conversation, putting your numbers into this to really see if the way that we help people could be a match for you and help you have more of what we call the 3 C's, you know, confidence, control, and comfort as you move forward. So click the link below, schedule a time, subscribe to our channel so that you can see more content, share this with others if you think it would be of interest. And we look forward to sharing more things like this with you as we move forward.